When Emma's mother married again, she didn't expect to feel more alone. At 22, she had just moved back home after college. Her degree in creative writing didn't land her the job she'd hoped for. She was burned out, uncertain, and tired of pretending she had it all figured out. The new house was in a quiet neighborhood in upstate New York, far from the city life she once loved. It was big, clean, and cold. Her mother seemed happy with her new husband, Tom, a serious man with a kind smile. Emma didn't dislike him, but she didn't really know him either. Then there was Caleb. Her new Stepbrother. Reserved always with headphones around his neck. His room was down the hall from hers, and yet it felt like he lived in a different world. He barely spoke during meals. He kept his eyes down. But sometimes when Emma glanced up from her coffee or her laptop, she'd see him watching her. Not in a weird way, just curious, like he was trying to figure her out. She couldn't tell if he liked her or if he just tolerated her. They didn't talk. Not really. Maybe a hey or good morning if they crossed paths in the kitchen. But there was no warmth. No bonding. She told herself it didn't matter. They were practically strangers forced under the same roof. He had his life. She had hers. And they would eventually go their separate ways. Emma tried to keep busy. She took long walks, filled notebooks with unfinished stories, and stayed up late watching old films. But nothing felt right. She missed her old friends. She missed being understood. Around her mother and Tom, she wore a polite smile. Around Caleb, she didn't wear anything at all, just silence. One afternoon, Emma came home from a walk and heard the faint sound of a guitar coming from Caleb's room. The door was slightly open. He sat on the edge of his bed, focused, strumming soft chords. She stood there for a second, quietly listening. The song wasn't familiar, but the feeling was. It reminded her of something lost, something that hurt a little to remember. She didn't say anything. She just walked away. Later that night, she stayed up journaling. She wrote about the boy she had left behind at school, the relationship that ended without a real goodbye. She wrote about her fear of starting over, her confusion about where life was taking her. She didn't know why she wrote it all down, maybe because it was safer than saying it out loud. Around 2 a.m., she closed the notebook, walked to the kitchen for a glass of water, and forgot the journal on the counter. In the morning, it was gone. Her heart dropped. She searched the kitchen, her bedroom, the living room, nowhere. Then, walking down the hall, she passed Caleb's room. His door was open. Her journal was sitting on his desk. She froze. He noticed her standing there. "I wasn't trying to be nosy," he said calmly. "You left it out. I didn't know what it was until I opened it." She walked in slowly, trying to hide her panic. "Did you read it?" Caleb looked at her. "A little. Enough to know you were hurting." Her face burned. "It's personal." "No. That's why I didn't finish it." He stood up, handed it back to her gently. "I won't tell anyone. It's safe." Emma didn't know what to say. She took the journal and turned to leave. But before she did, Caleb spoke again. "You're a good writer." She blinked, surprised. "I mean it," he added. "The way you write it feels honest." That was the first time they really spoke. And after that, things shifted. The next day, Caleb knocked on her door with a book in his hand. "I think you'd like this one," he said. It was a collection of poems, quiet, sad, beautiful. Emma accepted it, unsure why he cared. They started to share small moments. A quiet breakfast. A movie on the couch, neither saying much. Sometimes he'd send her a song link over text, and she'd listen and reply with a thoughtful line. Their conversations were brief, but meaningful. They didn't talk about the journal again. But Emma noticed he looked at her differently. Now, not like a stranger, but like someone who understood something others didn't. She wondered why he kept her secret. Why he didn't joke about it or use it against her. He was only 17, but sometimes he seemed older than the rest of them. More patient. More observant. One night, Emma had a nightmare. She woke up sweating, her heart racing. She didn't remember what it was about, just that it left her shaken. She walked to the kitchen for water and found Caleb already there, sitting in the dark. Couldn't sleep. he asked softly. She nodded. They didn't say much, just sat at the table, sipping water in the quiet. After a while, Caleb said it's okay to feel lost. Most people just pretend they're not. Emma looked at him. You seem like you figured it out. He gave a soft laugh. Not even close. That was the moment she realized they were more alike than she thought. Both trying to find their place in a life they didn't ask for. Both pretending they were okay when they weren't. From then on, their bond grew, not through big confessions or dramatic scenes, but in small ways. A shared silence, a knowing glance, the way he never asked for her secrets but somehow always made space for them, and Emma, for the first time in months, didn't feel completely alone. But deep down, she still wondered what was he hiding behind all his silence. And why did it feel like he understood her pain better than anyone else ever had? Emma hadn't meant to open up to Caleb. It just started happening. After the journal incident, she became more careful, but also more curious. Caleb hadn't told anyone. He hadn't teased her or judged her or made it a thing. Instead, he started showing up in small, thoughtful ways. A book left by her door. A playlist shared through text. Quiet company during breakfast. And for the first time in months, she felt like someone actually saw her. But it was still strange she was 17. Technically her stepbrother, and completely different from anyone she'd ever confided in. Yet somehow he listened better than any adult in her life. He didn't ask too many questions. He didn't try to fix her. He just listened. And that made her start talking. Most of their conversations happened late at night. Emma couldn't sleep much these days. Her thoughts raced, full of regret and what-ifs. One night, she was sitting on the back porch, wrapped in a blanket, when Caleb quietly joined her. Holding 2 mugs of tea. You looked cold, he said simply. Thanks. They sat in silence, the porch light casting soft shadows. After a while, Emma found herself saying something she hadn't said out loud in almost a year. I was in love once. I left without saying goodbye. Caleb didn't move. He didn't press. He just let her speak. We were together in college. It was serious. At least, I thought it was. But I panicked. Life got hard. I stopped believing in us. And I didn't fight for him. She stared at her mug, unsure why she was admitting this to a teenage boy she barely knew a month ago. I write about him sometimes, she added. But it never sounds right. Caleb finally spoke. Maybe because you're still trying to explain it to yourself? His words surprised her not, because they were wise, but because they were true. He had this way of getting right to the heart of things without pushing. After that night, things became easier between them. Their conversations grew deeper. Emma stopped filtering her thoughts. She told him about her struggles with writing, how the rejection emails from publishers were getting harder to read. She told him about the pressure to seem okay for her mom, how she always had to smile and say she was figuring it out, even when she wasn't. Caleb shared things too, slowly. He talked about school, about how he didn't fit in, how his friends had drifted since his mom's divorce, how music was the only place he felt like himself. Emma realized that behind his quiet nature, Caleb carried his own kind of sadness. Sometimes they didn't talk at all. They just shared space reading, watching shows, listening to music with one earbud each. It felt normal in a way nothing else did lately. Then one afternoon, Emma found something on her desk, a folded piece of notebook paper. On it was a simple line. Maybe you're not broken. Maybe you're just still healing. It wasn't signed, but she knew it was Caleb. The handwriting was neat, careful. The words stayed with her all day. She knocked on his door later and held up the note. Didn't mean to overstep. He said, "You didn't." She paused. "Thank you." A few days later, she left a poem on his guitar case. One she had written about feeling lost and being found in unexpected places. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. He didn't say anything about it. But the next time she passed his room, she heard him quietly strumming a tune to the rhythm of her poem. That was how they communicated now, through notes. Quiet glances. There was something unspoken building between them. Not romantic, Not obvious. Just a closeness that didn't need definition. But Emma was aware of the lines. She was older. He was her stepbrother, technically. People wouldn't understand. Still, she couldn't ignore how safe she felt around him. How her chest didn't tighten when he was near. How she could breathe easier knowing he wasn't judging her. And yet, the more she shared, the more one question stayed in the back of her mind. Why was he so willing to carry her secrets? One night, after a long walk, Emma returned home to find Caleb sitting alone in the living room. Headphones around his neck, eyes staring at the dark screen of the TV. He looked distant, like his thoughts were somewhere far away. "Everything okay?" she asked. He hesitated, then shrugged. "Yeah, just. Life stuff? You can talk to me too, you know." He gave her a small smile. "I know. Just not good at it." Emma sat beside him. "Try me." He was quiet for a while, then said, "It's weird. I don't really talk to my dad anymore. Not since he married your mom." The days grew shorter, and the house felt quieter in the early fall. Emma and Caleb's connection deepened without much fanfare. It wasn't about big conversations or dramatic moments. It was small things that made all the difference. Caleb didn't push Emma to talk, but when she did, he listened like no one else ever had. And that made her feel safe, like she could be herself without fear. One afternoon, Emma was sitting on the porch steps, writing in her notebook. Caleb came out holding a cup of coffee and sat beside her without saying a word. They shared the silence, broken only by the distant sound of leaves rustling in the wind. Emma showed him a poem she had written about feeling lost and finding small moments of hope. Caleb read it carefully, then simply said, "You're really good." His praise wasn't about flattery. It felt genuine, and for once, Emma believed it. She'd spent so long doubting herself, but Caleb's quiet support helped her see herself differently. As days passed, they continued exchanging notes and music. Caleb introduced Emma to new artists she had never heard of. Emma shared stories she hadn't dared tell anyone. She learned that Caleb's world was complicated too. His parents had divorced years ago, and he rarely saw his dad. Music was his escape, his way of making sense of everything. One evening, Emma found Caleb in the kitchen, making a sandwich. The house was dark except for the kitchen light. He looked up when she came in. "Want some?" he asked. Emma nodded, and they ate together in companionable silence. For the first time, it didn't feel strange to share space. It felt like belonging, but beneath the calm, Emma sensed Caleb carried his own secrets, things he didn't want to share. She wondered what they were, but she never pressed. Instead, she offered him her trust, hoping he'd do the same when he was ready. Then came the moment Emma had been avoiding. The conversation about the boy she left behind. One rainy night, wrapped in a blanket on the couch, she told Caleb about the relationship that ended too soon. She spoke quietly, almost as if telling a story rather than confessing a pain. "I thought it was forever," she said. "But I ran. I left without saying goodbye. Sometimes I wonder if he ever forgave me." Caleb listened, his eyes soft. "You don't have to carry that alone." She looked at him, surprised by his kindness. "Why do you care so much?" He shrugged, then smiled faintly. "Because you trusted me." That trust grew stronger. Caleb never judged her mistakes. Instead, he made space for her to heal. Emma began to see him not just as her stepbrother, but as someone who understood what it meant to feel broken and hopeful at the same time. One afternoon, Emma's mother mentioned how close Caleb and Emma seemed. Emma brushed it off, but noticed Caleb didn't react. That night, she asked him if their parents noticed. He shook his head. "They don't really see us. Not the way we see each other." Emma realized that for the first time she had someone who looked beyond the surface. Someone who saw her truth. Then came the small but meaningful gesture that sealed their bond. Emma found a note slipped under her door. It read, "I'm here. No matter what." It was simple, but it meant everything. She left a reply on Caleb's desk. "Me too." They didn't need to say more. Their quiet understanding spoke louder than words. But with all the closeness, Emma felt a growing worry. What if their secret friendship wasn't something others would accept? What if their bond was misunderstood? One night she asked Caleb, Why do you keep my secrets? Even the painful ones. He looked at her seriously. Because I know what it's like to be misunderstood. I want you to have someone who won't let your story be twisted or lost. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. She wasn't sure if it was relief or gratitude, but the weight she'd carried for so long felt lighter. They sat together in silence. Two people connected by trust and unspoken understanding. That night, Emma realized something important. Sometimes the deepest love isn't loud or flashy. Sometimes it's the quiet promise to keep someone's heart safe, no matter what. And that's exactly what Caleb was doing. Keeping her secrets wasn't just about trust. It was about love, patient, gentle, and real as autumn deepened. The bond between Emma and Caleb grew stronger in quiet ways that spoke louder than words. They had become each other's safe place in a house that still felt new and strange. The way Caleb kept her secrets, without judgment or pressure, made Emma feel seen like never before. But beneath the calm surface, there was something unspoken, a connection neither wanted to name but both felt deeply. One chilly evening, Emma came home from a long day and found a small folded note on her desk. Her heart quickened as she opened it. The note read simply, "I don't say much, but I hear you. I keep your secrets because you never laughed at mine." There was no signature, but Emma knew immediately it was from Caleb. That quiet message hit her harder than any conversation could. She walked to Caleb's room, note in hand, and found him sitting by the window, looking out at the dark sky. She hesitated before speaking. "You left the note," she said softly. He looked at her, a little surprised but not embarrassed. "I guess I'm better at writing things down than saying them out loud." Emma smiled gently. "Thank you. It means a lot." Caleb shrugged, his usual guarded expression softened. "We don't have to say everything out loud to understand each other." Emma sat beside him on the window seat. The night was cool, but the room felt warm with shared silence. For a moment, the usual title stepbrother, stepsister faded away. There was just the quiet closeness between two people who understood what it meant to carry pain and still hold hope. That night, Emma felt something shift inside her. She realized how rare it was to find someone who listened without trying to fix you, who held your vulnerabilities gently instead of judging them. Caleb wasn't just a stepbrother anymore. He was the person who made her feel like she belonged. Over the next few days, their unspoken connection deepened. They shared more moments watching the rain from the porch, trading favorite songs, and sitting together in the kitchen with mugs of hot chocolate. They didn't rush anything, didn't force feelings. Instead, they let their closeness grow naturally, built on trust and quiet understanding. One afternoon, while helping Caleb with his homework, Emma noticed how focused he was, how much effort he put into things even when he didn't talk about them. She realized how much he had grown, how much he had become more than just the quiet teenager she first met. She reached out, lightly touching his arm. "You're stronger than you think." Caleb looked at her, surprised by her words. "I've had to be," Emma nodded. "Me too." The house felt less lonely now. Their parents noticed, but neither Emma nor Caleb said much. They didn't need to explain what had changed. It was clear in the way they looked out for each other, the small kindnesses they exchanged. One night, Emma confessed something she'd kept hidden for a long time. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Scared that I'll never fix what I broke with him, the boy I left behind." Caleb listened without interrupting. After a moment, he said, "Maybe some things don't need fixing. Maybe they just need time." Emma looked at him, hope flickering in her chest. "Do you think you ever stop carrying your secrets?" He shrugged. "I think everyone has secrets. Maybe it's less about stopping and more about who you trust to hold them." Emma smiled, realizing that Caleb had been holding her secrets all along, because he had to, but because he wanted to, because he understood what it meant to need someone in your corner. Their connection wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was real. It was the steady comfort of knowing someone is there, no matter what. And in that quiet promise, Emma found something she hadn't thought possible: peace. They didn't rush to name their feelings or change their relationship overnight. Instead, they let things unfold naturally, knowing that some bonds are meant to grow quietly, deeply, without noise or pressure. In a world that often felt confusing and uncertain, Caleb became Emma's anchor. He kept her secrets not just out of loyalty, but because he cared in a way words couldn't fully express. And maybe that was the truest kind of love there is: patient, gentle, and steady. Clara had never liked silence, but after her husband Robert passed away 6 months ago, it became the only thing she knew. Their house, once filled with laughter and quiet music, now echoed with the kind of stillness that made her chest ache. The days were long, but the nights were harder. She often stayed up late, staring out the window, cup of tea in her hands, listening to the wind move through the trees outside. It was late September in Ashland, Oregon. The leaves had begun to fall, and the chill in the air hinted that winter wasn't far off. Clara had spent the day cleaning out Robert's old office. She didn't throw anything away, just did the shelves and folded his sweaters. Grief came in waves, and some days she just let it wash over her. That night, around midnight, Clara was in the kitchen finishing a cup of tea. The rain had started to fall softly, tapping against the windows. She turned off the lights, ready to head to bed, when she heard it, the front door creaking open. Her body tensed. No one should have been there. She lived alone, far from the main road. Her heart started racing as she reached for her phone. Then came a voice, low and familiar. "Clara." She froze. It was Alex, her stepson. He stood in the hallway, soaked from the rain, a duffel bag hanging from his shoulder, looking like someone who hadn't slept in days. His hair was longer, face more defined than she remembered, like life had added years that didn't belong there. Clara hadn't seen him in nearly 2 years, not since he left for Seattle. He hadn't even come to the funeral. She never asked why. She figured everyone grieved differently. "Alex," she said quietly, unsure if she was dreaming. "What are you doing here?" He didn't answer right away, just shrugged. "I didn't know where else to go. That was enough." She stepped aside and let him in. She found him a towel, made him tea, and left a blanket on the couch. He didn't explain where he'd been or why he was there now. Clara didn't push. She could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the heaviness he carried. Some pain didn't need words. The next morning, Alex was already in the kitchen when Clara came downstairs. He had made coffee. The smell was warm and familiar, something she hadn't had in months. They sat in silence, sipping slowly. Clara watched him over the rim of her cup. His presence felt strange, like a memory walking around in the present. But there was something comforting about it, too, like maybe she wasn't as alone as she thought. "Sorry for just showing up," he said quietly, eyes focused on the window. "I should have called." Clara shook her head. "You're always welcome here." He nodded, but didn't say much more. The rest of the day passed slowly. He stayed in the guest room, occasionally coming out to help her with small things, fixing the back door hinge, changing a light bulb in the hallway. It wasn't much, but it meant something. Over the next few days, a quiet rhythm settled between them. They didn't talk about Robert. They didn't talk about the past. But they were no longer strangers in the same house. Clara noticed the way Alex moved, how careful he was not to disturb her space. Yet how naturally he seemed to fall back into it. There was a softness to him she hadn't seen before, a kind of quiet grief that matched her own. One evening, Clara found him sitting on the porch, staring out at the trees. The sun was low, casting golden light across the yard. She brought him a cup of tea and sat beside him. "I used to come out here with your dad," she said softly. "He'd talk about building a greenhouse in the back." Alex gave a faint smile. "Yeah, he always had a new project." There was a pause. Then he looked at her eyes, sincere. "I'm sorry I didn't come to the funeral." Clara nodded slowly. "I missed you, but I understand." He looked down at his hands. "I didn't know how to face it. Him, you." That sentence sat between them like a fragile glass. Clara didn't know what to say. She just placed her hand gently over his, offering comfort without forcing forgiveness. That night, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering what had really brought him back. It wasn't just grief. There was something else behind his eyes, something unspoken. She had seen the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, and she wasn't sure what that meant. But the silence. And the house had changed. It no longer felt empty. It felt like the beginning of something unexpected. The next morning, the house felt different. Clara noticed it as soon as she woke up. The air was warmer somehow, not because of the weather, but because Alex was there. She found him in the kitchen again, already dressed, already making coffee. He moved around like he had done it 100 times before. And maybe he had before everything changed. Clara offered a small smile as she entered. "You're up early." Alex shrugged. Couldn't sleep? She didn't ask why. The heaviness around him was still there, though quieter now. He poured her a cup of coffee and slid it across the counter. No words, just a small gesture. But it mattered. Later that day, Clara went out to water the plants by the porch. She hadn't expected to find Alex already there, fixing the broken porch light. It had been flickering for weeks. Robert used to promise he'd get to it tomorrow. Tomorrow never came. "You didn't have to do that," she said. Alex looked back at her. "I wanted to." He climbed down the ladder and dusted off his hands. Clara noticed a small scar on his arm, one she hadn't seen before. He caught her staring and smiled faintly. "Got that last year. Construction job in Seattle. Nothing serious." That was the first thing he'd said about his life since arriving. Clara waited, hoping he'd say more. But he didn't. He walked past her and disappeared into the house that night. After dinner, they sat across from each other at the dining table. The radio played soft music, in the background dull jazz, the kind Robert used to love. Clara pushed her plate aside and looked at Alex. "You've changed," she said quietly. He looked up, surprised. "Good or bad?" "Just older." "Wiser, maybe?" He nodded, his eyes distant. Life has a way of doing that. She wanted to ask what had happened. Why he'd really come back? Why now? But the questions sat in her throat, unspoken. It wasn't the right moment. So instead she stood and began clearing the table. He helped without asking. Days passed, and Alex didn't leave. He said he'd stay just a little while, but each morning Clara found him still there. He started helping around the house more. He trimmed the overgrown hedges, fixed the back steps, even restacked the firewood. Clara didn't know how to feel about it. It was nice having someone around again. But it also stirred something in her she hadn't felt in a long time, something she wasn't ready to name. One evening, the sky turned pink as the sun dipped low behind the hills. Clara took a walk along the trail that curved behind the house. To her surprise, Alex joined her. They walked side by side, leaves crunching beneath their feet, the cool air brushing against their skin. "This place is quieter than I remember," he said. "You haven't been back in a long time." He nodded. "I didn't think I would be." Clara looked over at him. "So why now?" Alex didn't answer right away. His hands were in his pockets, his eyes on the trail ahead. "I was tired of running," he said finally. "And I missed ... something. Someone." The way he said it made Clara's chest tighten. She didn't know what he meant exactly, but she felt it. The weight in his voice. The honesty. When they returned home, the air had grown colder. Clara made tea, and they sat in the living room near the fireplace. The silence was soft, not uncomfortable. Alex leaned back in the armchair, legs stretched out, eyes half closed. "Do you remember when you first moved in?" he asked suddenly. Clara looked up. "Of course. You used to hum when you cleaned." "I always thought it was strange," she laughed. "I still do that," he smiled. "Yeah, I noticed." There was something in his smile that lingered, something more than amusement. It made her heart beat faster. She looked away, unsure what to do with the warmth rising in her chest. Later that night, Clara couldn't sleep. She walked downstairs to get a glass of water and found Alex already there, leaning against the counter. He looked like he'd been standing there for a while, lost in thought. I didn't mean to scare you, he said softly. It's fine, Clara replied. Stepping into the kitchen, they stood there in silence. The soft hum of the refrigerator, the only sound. Then Alex spoke again. I keep thinking about him, about how fast everything happened. Clara nodded. Me too. He looked at her, then really looked at her. You were good to him. I don't think I ever said that. Her eyes met his. You don't have to. I want to, he said. I wasn't sure how to feel about you at first. You were younger than him. I thought it was all temporary. But you made him happy. Clara swallowed hard. We were happy. He stepped closer, not too close, but enough that she could feel his presence. I didn't just miss him, he said. I miss this place. And you? Her breath caught for a moment. The words settled between them like soft snow. She didn't know what to say, didn't know if she should say anything at all. Maybe I should go to bed, she said. Voice low, Alex nodded slowly, stepping back. Good night, Clara. Good night, Alex. As she climbed the stairs, she didn't look back. But she felt his eyes on her the whole way. Something unspoken had passed between them, something that hadn't been there before. Or maybe it had always been there. Waiting for the silence to be broken. The next morning, the house felt different. Clara noticed it as soon as she woke up. The air was warmer somehow, not because of the weather, but because Alex was there. She found him in the kitchen again, already dressed, already making coffee. He moved around like he had done it 100 times before. And maybe he had before everything changed. Clara offered a small smile as she entered. You're up early. Alex shrugged. Couldn't sleep. She didn't ask why. The heaviness around him was still there, though quieter now. He poured her a cup of coffee and slid it across the counter. No words, just a small gesture. But it mattered. Later that day, Clara went out to water the plants by the porch. She hadn't expected to find Alex already there, fixing the broken porch light. It had been flickering for weeks. Robert used to promise he'd get to it tomorrow. Tomorrow never came. You didn't have to do that, she said. Alex looked back at her. I wanted to. He climbed down the ladder and dusted off his hands. Clara noticed a small scar on his arm, one she hadn't seen before. He caught her staring and smiled faintly. Got that last year. Construction job in Seattle. Nothing serious. That was the first thing he'd said about his life since arriving. Clara waited, hoping he'd say more. But he didn't. He walked past her and disappeared into the house that night. After dinner, they sat across from each other at the dining table. The radio played soft music in the background, dulled jazz, the kind Robert used to love. Clara pushed her plate aside and looked at Alex. You've changed, she said quietly. He looked up, surprised. Good or bad? Just older. Wiser, maybe? He nodded, his eyes distant. Life has a way of doing that. She wanted to ask what had happened. Why he'd really come back? Why now? But the question sat in her throat, unspoken. It wasn't the right moment. So instead, she stood and began clearing the table. He helped without asking. Days passed and Alex didn't leave. He said he'd stay just a little while, but each morning Clara found him still there. He started helping around the house more. He trimmed the overgrown hedges, fixed the back steps, even restacked the firewood. Clara didn't know how to feel about it. It was nice having someone around again. But it also stirred something in her she hadn't felt in a long time, something she wasn't ready to name. One evening, the sky turned pink as the sun dipped low behind the hills. Clara took a walk along the trail that curved behind the house. To her surprise, Alex joined her. They walked side by side, leaves crunching beneath their feet. The cool air brushing against their skin. This place is quieter than I remember. He said, You haven't been back in a long time. He nodded. I didn't think I would be. Clara looked over at him. So why now? Alex didn't answer right away. His hands were in his pockets, his eyes on the trail ahead. I was tired of running, he said finally. And I missed ... something. Someone. The way he said it made Clara's chest tighten. She didn't know what he meant exactly, but she felt it. The weight in his voice. The honesty when they returned home, the air had grown colder. Clara made tea, and they sat in the living room near the fireplace. The silence was soft, not uncomfortable. Alex leaned back in the armchair, legs stretched out, eyes half closed. "Do you remember when you first moved in?" he asked suddenly. Clara looked up. "Of course. You used to hum when you cleaned. I always thought it was strange." She laughed. "I still do that." He smiled. "Yeah, I noticed." There was something in his smile that lingered, something more than amusement. It made her heart beat faster. She looked away, unsure what to do with the warmth rising in her chest. Later that night, Clara couldn't sleep. She walked downstairs to get a glass of water and found Alex already there, leaning against the counter. He looked like he'd been standing there for a while, lost in thought. "I didn't mean to scare you," he said softly. "It's fine," Clara replied. Stepping into the kitchen, they stood there in silence. The soft hum of the refrigerator, the only sound. Then Alex spoke again. "I keep thinking about him, about how fast everything happened." Clara nodded. "Me too." He looked at her then, really looked at her. "You were good to him." "I don't think I ever said that." Her eyes met his. "You don't have to." "I want to," he said. "I wasn't sure how to feel about you at first. You were younger than him. I thought it was all temporary." "But you made him happy." Clara swallowed hard. "We were happy." He stepped closer. Not too close, but enough that she could feel his presence. "I didn't just miss him," he said. "I missed this place." "And you?" Her breath caught for a moment. The words settled between them like soft snow. She didn't know what to say, didn't know if she should say anything at all. "Maybe I should go to bed," she said. Voice low. Alex nodded slowly, stepping back. "Good night, Clara. Good night, Alex." As she climbed the stairs, she didn't look back. But she felt his eyes on her the whole way. Something unspoken had passed between them, something that hadn't been there before. Or maybe it had always been there. Waiting for the silence to be broken. Winter settled over Ashland like a soft blanket, quiet and slow. The days grew shorter and the nights stretched long and cold. Inside the old house, Clara and Alex found themselves wrapped in a fragile warmth. Something new and unexpected. Their relationship had changed, deepened beyond what either had imagined when Alex first returned. The walls that once held unspoken words and guarded feelings were slowly coming down. One evening, as snow started to fall gently outside, Clara sat by the fireplace, a book in her lap, but her mind elsewhere. The soft crackle of the fire filled the room. Alex joined her, carrying 2 mugs of hot chocolate. He handed one to her and settled close on the couch. Close enough that their shoulders touched. "It's strange," Alex said quietly. "How everything feels different now." Clara looked up, meeting his eyes. "I know, I've felt it too." They shared a smile, small but meaningful. The tension that had hovered between them had softened into something calm and steady, like the steady rhythm of the falling snow outside. Over the next weeks, they grew even closer, not rushing, not forcing anything, just letting things unfold naturally. They cooked meals together, shared stories from their pasts, and found comfort in quiet moments. Alex helped Clara prepare the house for winter sealing windows, stacking wood in return. Clara made sure there was always a warm meal waiting. One afternoon, while clearing snow from the driveway, Alex slipped on the ice and fell. Clara rushed to help him up, laughing despite the worry. "You're hopeless," she teased, brushing snow from his coat. He grinned back, the playful spark in his eyes reminding her of the boy he used to be and the man he was becoming. "Maybe I just wanted you to get closer." Her laugh softened, and for a moment they stood there, the cold forgotten between them. That night, after the house was quiet and the fire low, Alex found Clara in the kitchen, washing dishes. She looked tired, but content. He stepped beside her, the silence stretching between them. "I've been thinking," he said slowly, "about what comes next. About us." Clara turned to face him, her heart beating faster. "Me too. I don't want to lose this," he continued. "This feeling of being home. With you." She reached out, taking his hand. Neither do I. They stood together in the soft kitchen light, quiet promise passing between them. But even as they found peace in each other, the outside world waited. The community they lived in was small, tight-knit, and change was never easy. Clara knew that if people found out about their growing closeness, it would raise questions, maybe even judgment. One afternoon, Clara's neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, stopped by with a pie and a curious smile. "It's so nice to see Alex back," she said, glancing between them. "You two seem closer than ever." Clara forced a smile. "We're just taking things day by day." Mrs. Jenkins nodded knowingly, then changed the subject. But Clara felt the weight of her words linger. That evening, she shared the moment with Alex, who squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Let them think what they want. We know the truth." Clara nodded, grateful for his strength. As winter deepened, Clara and Alex began to talk openly about the future. They discussed their hopes, their fears, and the life they wanted to build, one based on honesty, respect, and the kind of love that had grown quietly in the shadows. They made no promises about what lay ahead, but they promised to face it together. One snowy night, after a long walk through the woods, they stopped beneath a canopy of stars. The cold bit at their cheeks, but they didn't move apart. Alex reached for Clara's hand, holding it tightly. "I don't know what the future holds," he said softly, "but I want to face it with you." Clara smiled, her eyes shining with warmth. "Me, too." They stood there for a long time, wrapped in the stillness of the night. Finding strength in each other's presence, spring would come again, bringing new life and fresh beginnings. But for now, in the quiet winter, Clara and Alex had found something raw, a love that was patient, honest, and strong enough to weather any storm. Their story was far from over. It was just beginning.